You are constantly being watched. It may not feel like it, it may not seem like it, and you may not want to believe, but that will just put you at the detriment of what the world sees when you're not paying attention. Now, this is something that I wanted to avoid and try and say wasn't actually the reality for the longest time, but it took me going through a couple situations that I'll talk about today to realize that people are constantly watching you. They're checking your social media pages. They're checking to see what you're talking about. They're asking other people about you, and there's constant gossip going on in the name of understanding who you are. People want to put you into a box. They want to be able to understand and grasp every part of you so that they can feel like they don't need to learn about you. But the flip side is they're doing it day by day, trying to pinpoint who you are and see if you're authentic or not. Lately, I've been going through a handful of situations. I've started my content creation journey and I've been wanting to be as open and expressive as I possibly can to try and find a community that I can serve with the knowledge I have to share. And the thing that I've constantly run into is whenever I would happen to check in on somebody and have a conversation with people from my past, they would always say one specific phrase. Oh, I've seen those videos you've been posting. Oh, I've seen that you did XYZ. Oh, I heard about the fact that you did XYZ. But none of these are things that I had told them about. None of these are things that I had particularly seen any support from. So if you saw me post this piece of content, why didn't you like? Especially because a lot of them would say, I liked that video you posted. Oh, I saw the video about this and I thought it was really cool. But they never liked it. They weren't even following my pages. They weren't supporting, and yet they, for some reason, saw what I was doing. And when it came time to actually converse with me, then they wanted to acknowledge the fact that they had saw what I was doing. They wanted to acknowledge that they were keeping tabs, but they never actually wanted to make it very obvious that they were there. And the more I ran into that situation, the more I started to look around and say, oh, I am under a microscope. Granted, I post on social media. I create content. So obviously people around me are going to see. The biggest thing is for all the times that people have said, oh, I love the content you're doing. I love this. I love that. It brought me a handful of pieces of information on mental health, which we'll dive into today, on public relations and the community you navigate, and also personal interaction. And we'll get into that as well. But the big thing that I want you to grasp from this first interaction is A, the people around you are watching what you're doing. They want to know what you're doing. They just want to know whether or not they want to support. So everything you do is pretty much a gauge of value to the people in your community. 2, the people around you are talking about what you have going on. And we'll dive into how that pans out and why that's so impactful on mental health. And then 3, we're going to talk about how what you do and the lens that you're under will really shape the identity you have to reach a level of success. Because if you don't navigate this game correctly, you're going to fall victim to these systems that are set up. So first, when you accept the reality that you're constantly being watched, you will start to understand why people who are going through mental health issues face the issues that they have. You'll notice that the people with depression are the ones who smile the biggest. And it's because they realize through the pain that they're enduring, through the pain that they're suffering, nobody actually cares. The reason that people who are going through the most despair just simply smile it off is because they accepted that, oh, everybody around me knows what's going on. Everybody around me is talking about the situation that I'm dealing with, and nobody's here to actually help. If I try and ask somebody about or for help, they will say, I'm praying for you, but they won't actually be there to assist you. I've had a couple of friends pass away by their own doing. One by actually just openly taking his life, and the other by a drug overdose. And these two situations beat me up mentally for years because of the fact I felt like if I was there, I could have helped. I may not have been able to change the situation, but I could have helped. And the reason for that is when I know somebody's going through despair, I actually try to help them change. I'm actually willing to be there to have conversations. I'm actually willing to say, okay, you think this is what's going to help you change? How can we make sure you get that? How can we hold you accountable to the changes you're trying to make to feel better? And what I found is that on my own journey of dealing with mental issues and going through despair is when I went to other people, their typical response was, "That's so sad. Oh, I'll pray for you." But nobody was willing to actually offer help. And when people did offer help, that help came with a level of resentment because they had to go out of their way to do something for me when I was in a time of need. There's a lot of people facing hardship and despair, and they know if they ask for help, the people who are around them are going to turn on them. We live in a society where it's altruistic and it sounds good to say, "Hey, I'm here for you. Tell me if you need anything." But the reality is those same people who say they're there for you are not. When you say, "I need something," they'll feel like, "Why are you asking me? Go fix your own situation. This isn't my job to help you." And so when people start facing a troubling time and despair, then they have to accept that reality that, oh, they say they're there for me, but they don't really care. And that's the first and biggest lesson when it comes to people are constantly watching you, and it causes mental health issues. And the reason I say that is because I've had to wrestle and come to grips with the fact that I fully understand why my two friends passed away. The one who ended up taking his own life, he was facing issues with the health of family members. He was going through a breakup. He was dealing with issues with drugs. And after he ended up passing, multiple different people ended up calling me and telling me his story. They all knew what was going on. And when I would get down to the point of saying, like, "How are you helping him?" They would be like, "Oh, well." They never actually had a way that they were going to actually support him through change. None of them had answers as to how they were trying to make a difference in his life. And what beat me up is I hadn't talked to him in years. I'm not one of those people who actually views other people's lives from the third person. If I'm not talking to you, if I'm not communicating with you, if you're not in my community, I don't know what you have going on in your life. I'm not a voyeur. I don't need to see everything you're doing on social media. It's either you tell me or it's not my business. And so a bunch of people were sitting there knowing the situation and the circumstances that this specific friend of mine was going through, but none of them were actually there trying to help. They were literally sitting on the side, talking amongst the community that they were in, talking about him, talking about his situation, talking about all that he was going through, but none of them were actually there to help. I've had to come to grips with he passed away by his own hand, learning the fact that the people around him don't actually care. They cared enough to talk about his situation. They cared enough to judge him, but they never cared enough to actually try to help him change. These were people who were constantly around him that he had grown up with and he had thought were friends and family members. But they were only there to be able to see what he was doing and talk behind his back, but they were not there to actually help make a change. This other friend, he was in a very similar situation where he had the ability to get practically anything he wanted. He was from a family that had a good amount of money. He had people constantly around him, but he was turning to drugs to try and cope with the pain of the reality of what he was going through. And again, there were so many people who could tell me everything he was dealing with, but they could not answer what they were trying to do to help him change. Now, I heard a situation of two different young ladies actually going out of their way to try and make sure he was making a change and he was doing better. And to them, I give their kudos. But to everybody else, they had an idea of what could have been different, how they could have helped. But when the question came of, how did you try to help him? What was it that you actually did to step in front of the pain that he was dealing with and help take some of that burden and load off of him? None of them had an answer. Everybody was willing to gossip. Everybody was willing to talk about and judge this young man based on what they saw from him, but they did not take the time to actually go reach out to him and try and help fix the situation. None of them took the time to try and at least lend their ear to unburden him. People are always watching, but only enough to be able to judge until your situation becomes profitable to them. And so on my own journey of trying to navigate, what does it actually mean to be a part of a community? What does it actually mean to actually have a friend? I realized that based on a conversation I had during one of the darkest moments of my life, one of my old roommates ended up telling me a statement that I will never forget, and it has completely revamped how I see communication with the world. I asked him where his group of friends were. Where were the people that he was constantly spending time with? And he said, oh, just so you know, they're not my friends. These are people I hang around because they're around. And that completely reframed my mind on what it means to have a friend and what it means to be a friend. Because again, when you start looking at, oh, these are my friends, these are people who are around me, if you actually take a step and ask, how many of these people would truly be there if I start to have a mental breakdown? How many of these people would actually be there if I was really going through something? A family member passed away and now I'm depressed. How many of these people would check in on me? How many of these people would look to see how I've been doing if I ended up moving away? How many of these people would go out of their way to try and help me in the event that a problem actually arose in my life? You'll realize these are people who hang around because you're around. These are people who watch your life because they want to know what you have going on, but they don't actually want to be there to support you. They don't actually want to help you push to become a better person. They don't want to actually see you fulfill your life's purpose. They want to spend time because you're around them. They want to be able to mitigate the loneliness they feel by having your presence be a battery to them. A lot of people are in friendships, or I would rather say acquaintanceships, that are built on mutual gossip and people watching. It's not actually a reality of we like spending time together. It's we like spending time together and gossiping. And if you took that gossip away, your friendship would fall apart. Your acquaintanceship would be nothing more than disrespectful discourse. And so when I started to dive deep on this, it really messed me up. But the way that I really had to come to acceptance with this, because like I said, for a long time, I was grappling with this idea, but it started to dawn on me with my own mother. My mother, when certain situations would happen, she would bring up people back in Washington, people back home are asking questions. They're asking, what is going on with TJ, me? What is going on with you? People are wondering why you aren't more successful, why you aren't able to do this, why you aren't able to do that. And for the longest time, I thought she was just lying. I thought she was making something up to try and motivate me or light a fire under my ass. And I tried to push that thought out of my head. But there was three main situations that started to make that reality come true. First, I already brought up, well, people seeing my content, we end up getting in a conversation and they bring up what they saw, but they never actually supported. But the two situations that ended up really solidifying that for me ended up coming at my current place of work. Ultimately, there was a situation where I decided and I learned from a mentor that the people you work with are not your friends. They don't need access to your social media, so go ahead and block them just so you don't have to worry about them seeing what you have going on. At the time, I wasn't 100% sure why my mentor told me this, but I said, okay, cool. I blocked everybody that I work with on my social media, but I missed one young lady and her boyfriend. Ultimately, I ended up posting this video about my client losing 25 pounds. One thing I noticed is 3 weeks later, my coworker's boyfriend popped up in my suggested on Instagram. And if you don't know how the suggested work, there's 3 ways people pop up in your suggested. One, they follow people that you follow and you interact with that person's page. The second way that someone may pop up in your suggested is if they actively went on your page. If you post a reel and someone ends up going on your page, looking through your post, but they don't actually like anything, they don't follow, they'll pop up in your suggested. And the third way is you actually going on someone else's page, looking through their content, and then you leave their page without following, they will pop up in your suggested. And so when I ended up seeing this specific coworker's boyfriend pop up in my suggested, I was like, that's interesting, but let me go ahead and block him. And then I went, found her page. I ended up blocking her so that everybody I work with and all their partners were blocked. Fast forward to the very next day, for the first time, she references the fact that she saw my Instagram. And she was like, hey, I ended up seeing that video of you and your client. Like, it was a really cool video. Like, I'm proud of you being able to help him lose 25 pounds. And I was like, that's interesting. The day after I block you, you end up telling me you ended up seeing one of my videos. That's peculiar, because how did you see a video if I just blocked you? Or was it you had seen my video, you had been watching my page, but you didn't reference the fact that you saw my page and my post until after I blocked you because you noticed I blocked you and you couldn't find my page anymore. Either way that goes, you're odd. Fast forward a few weeks, I end up going to MEPS. I end up like posting a video talking about how I got a 90 on the ASVAB and I did pretty good. Well, I get back from Dallas, and then the very next time I see her, she says, "Hey, what is this I hear about you going to MEPS and you joining the military?" And I was just like, intriguing. But no, I mean, it's an opportunity. I'm vetting my opportunities to see what's going to be best for me and my family moving forward. She's like, "Oh, yep, makes sense." But in the back of my mind, there was like, this coworker was blocked off my social media, so there was no way she would have been able to see that post. So ultimately, it came down to the point where I was like, okay, somehow, some way, she still bypassed the fact that I blocked her, and she looked at my Instagram page and saw that. So she's being odd. She's being odd. She really wants to see what I have going on, which is, again, how my mind was open to the fact that people around you are constantly watching what you're doing. People around you are being voyeurs into your life until the point that your life becomes something interesting enough for them to gain value from. And then they want to let you know that they've actually been paying attention. And so with this situation, I ended up just feeling some type of odd way. And the very next day, again, all this happened the very next day, which is so, I feel like God was teaching me a lesson. But ultimately, I end up asking this coworker, he has a problem with it. I asked my client, she's like, "No, I didn't." And the very next day, this specific coworker comes up and says, "Hey, yeah, so I end up like figuring out that you ended up going to MEPS because we have this mutual friend and I saw him repost your post on social media." And I was like, "Oh, okay, I get that. That's cool." But in the back of my mind, I was like, that would be impossible. Granted, this specific mutual friend of ours did repost it. But if I have her blocked, when he reposts something, it will simply say post unavailable. She won't be able to see what the post actually is. She won't actually be able to see what is actually said in the post. It will just come up as a gray screen saying post unavailable, and it's something that she would have to skip over. And so in that moment, I realized, yes, she is actually trying to keep tabs on what I have going on in my life. There had been multiple conversations I had told her about me doing videography. There was multiple conversations I had with her talking about I like to do content creation. And yet there was never a point where she was actually interested in bringing it up to me until I had blocked her, which told me, oh, people in my community are trying to watch what I'm trying to do. And they want to be able to keep tabs on what I have going on behind the scenes because they want access to my life. But at the same time, they're unwilling to actually ask questions about what I have going on. And then it just, again, everything unraveled from that situation, because that same coworker I initially asked, "Hey, by any chance, did you ask our coworker or did you tell our coworkers about me going to MEPS?" He ended up having a problem with me. And this is the reason why. In people's journey to navigate who you are and learn about what you have going on, when you remove access, people get perturbed, right? So he wanted to view my life from a conversational lens. I don't think he was actually viewing my social media. I don't think he actually even cared. He's an older guy. But what I learned from him is him and my other coworkers have been speaking about me behind my back. There's a culture of gossip around me. People don't want to ask me about what's going on. People don't want to ask me about who I am, but people want to talk about me and their ideas of who I might be behind the scenes. And with that, he specifically taught me 3 very important lessons. First is, 1, yes, people obviously are watching you, and so you have to accept that. If you don't accept the fact that people are watching what you have going on, you are very naive. 2, it is naive to feel any type of way of people gossiping about you. If you want to go and reach any level of success, you have to accept people are going to gossip about you. And we'll talk about that here in a second. And number 3 is, if you don't want people in your business, you either have to A, create a story to tell to them that will keep them off the tracks of what you're really doing, or B, you need to get very good at telling partial truths. But either way, number 3 is that you have to lie to these people. First, like we've been talking about this entire video, people are constantly watching what you have going on, and they want to view what you're doing and they want to talk about what you're doing, but they don't actually want to support you. Everything I've talked about so far is to reinforce all of this. And he taught me that specifically because, again, I don't think he's someone who's trying to view my life from the outside, but what he definitely is doing is he's talking about me and what I have going on when I'm not around. He had a problem with the fact that I asked him, hey, did you tell my coworker about this? Because of the fact that he did. He had that conversation. He was conversing with her about me and what I had going on. And it's not even a situation of it's right or wrong. It just simply is I inadvertently caught him in the act of gossiping about me, which made him feel some type of way. And for that reason, we no longer speak. But even bigger than that, number 2, people naturally want to gossip. So at every point in every stage of your success, if people aren't gossiping about you, you're more than likely losing. People are going to talk about the best player on the field when they're sitting in the stands. Think about it. If you're on a football team and you end up catching the most perfect pass and you run it back for 60 yards, everybody in the stands is going to be talking about you. And they will literally be behind your back because when you're on the field, if you go to the sidelines to take a break while special teams is doing your thing, your back is to the stands and they're talking about you. Oh, that was such a good catch. Oh, did you know he does? Oh, did you hear this about him? At every point on your rise to fame, there are going to be more and more people talking about you and talking behind your back because they are not with you and they don't have the courage and the gall to actually come up and speak to you. And even beyond that, when you get to a certain level of success, people don't even have the access to come up and talk to you. And so they're going to talk behind your back. If you want any level of success and you feel as if you're going to be able to reach that without people gossiping, without people flapping the yaps behind your back, you failed. The lesson that is arguably most important when you're actually navigating, learning about this entire situation is you will be naive to think you will never be talked about. You are naive to feel some type of way about people gossiping about you. What I learned from this situation is in almost every situation that you're in, it is the most natural and common thing for people to hear something and want to spread it around. I'm almost to the point of believing it's truly human nature for people to talk to you, learn a piece about who you are, and then share that information around so the rest of the community around you knows exactly what you told them. And so I had to sit in the fact that for a while, I was a fool by believing if I kept my business to myself, nobody was going to talk. Whether I keep my business to myself, whether I spread all my business, whether I post my content, people are going to talk about me regardless because I'm somebody who garners respect. People don't get creating content. People don't get lighting. People don't get cameras. People don't get the things that I like to talk about. And since I don't spread that information around, they want to talk about the fact that I'm doing these things, but they just don't get it. And so regardless of what I do and regardless of how I do it, somebody's going to be talking about me and somebody's going to be spreading some type of information. And until I was able to fully grasp that, I was being foolish. And on your rise to fame, on your rise to glory, you need to accept people are going to talk about you. The more people that talk about you, the better life gets. Think about Eazy-E. He said no publicity is bad publicity. Or no, he said all publicity is good publicity. But either way, it still stands to reason, the more people that talk about you, the better. But at the end of the day, if nobody says a word about you at any point, then that means you failed because now you're invisible to the world around you and you get no opportunity. Well, for me, one thing I know is people talk about me so much behind my back that I know at least one opportunity sooner or later is going to come just from somebody talking behind my back. And until you can get to the point where you understand whatever I do when somebody talks behind my back, it brings more power to my name and my family, to the name that would be on the back of the jersey, you will never succeed. You have to accept that people are going to gossip about you. You have to accept that people are going to use your name in rooms that you're not even in. And once you can accept that, and then you get to put yourself in a position where you decide what that actually means. Does that mean when someone says my name, it's something good? Does that mean when somebody says my name, it means more money's coming into my pocket? Does that mean whatever I want it to be? When you get to the point where you get to decide what that truly means, then you get to dictate the future and the reality that you live. So moving on to number 3 that this situation taught me is that you need to either have a backup story that keeps people off your trail, or you need to learn to tell partial truths. It's an unfortunate reality that I don't necessarily like, but the reality is If you don't want people talking about what you have going on, you just simply have to lie. You simply have to lie, because people don't actually need to know what's going on in your life. People simply need to know what's going to be pertinent information. And so for me, one struggle that I ran into is, for a long time, I thought I could be fully authentic. I could tell the whole and complete truth. But that just caused me to run into more and more roadblocks. We live in a society where it's more important to be cordial and kind than it is to actually tell the truth. So instead of saying, I don't like this person, you could just be like, yeah, they're just not my favorite. There's a lot of ways to go around being truthful and authentic, but reality is you either have two options. One, create a story that you can tell to keep people off your track, or B, you need to be able to tell a half truth. So we're going to go down this first part of create a story that you can tell other people. One thing you can do to be able to keep your autonomy and make sure people don't fully understand and grasp what you have going on behind the scenes until you've been able to succeed is to craft a story that you know you're going to tell people. So here's an example. If you wanted to become a mixed martial artist and you don't want people to fully understand what's going on in your life, you could do something as simple as saying, hey, I joined a self-defense class, and then people have something that they get to grab onto and run with and start gossiping about. Because the reality is certain things that you do may come off as against the social or the status quo, and that may cause you to lose opportunities or have this gossip come back on you in a negative way. For example, martial arts. People see martial arts as something extremely violent, and that's something you don't want to do. I have run into a lot of issues because people don't understand the idea of martial arts is fighting, but if it's geared in a very specific way and you're learning how to use your body in a sport-like fashion, there's nothing wrong with martial arts. Doing jiu-jitsu, learning to box, learning Muay Thai, all these things are fighting. But because I was naive, I would just simply say, oh yeah, I like to fight. And then people would look at me weird. People would try and call me immature. But then when people were facing certain issues, I would say, why don't you just grab some gloves and go hit a heavy bag? And after these same people hit the heavy bag, they would be like, oh, this is why you enjoy fighting. And the reality is, every man should learn martial arts because that would make the world a lot more of a safe place. But in that right, there's a certain story and a certain narrative that you're going to have to put up and a certain face you're going to have to put on to keep your reputation good. Or what you could do is you could tell partial truths. Yeah, I was in this environment and somebody accidentally elbowed me in the eye. Whether it was martial arts, whether it was self-defense, or you're telling a partial truth and just not letting them know why you ended up being in an environment where you could accidentally get elbowed in the face. At the end of the day, you're not going to tell people the full honest truth, especially when you have something to be successful in. For example, one situation that I've personally realized is one that I just simply can't tell everybody the truth about is with my content. Like I said, my own mentor told me I need to block everybody I work with. And why is that? Because even if I'm not posting stuff that's bad, this message specifically that I'm talking about right now may be seen as something that's inappropriate, and that could get me lost opportunities. If you're somebody who sees this and you're looking at possibly giving me an opportunity, just understand this is exactly why this entire point is being made. And so when you're trying to navigate success and moving forward and understanding that everybody around you is watching what you're doing and is making sure they can decide how they feel about you based on things they're watching from you, people have noticed this specific thing from me, and I didn't even talk to them about it. They never inquired about me, and yet they're still willing to come here and judge me based off of it. You'll come to the grips with the fact like, oh, this is not the group for me. These are not the people for me. But either I, A, need to have a complete story, a bald-faced lie to share with these people, or I need to tell them partial truths. There's no way around it. And if you try to fight that to the deepest part of my core, I feel like you're a fool. I genuinely believe and I genuinely feel that if you think you can tell everybody the 100% God-honest truth, you are a fool. There's no area, there's no avenue where you can say exactly what's on your mind and exactly what you're doing for the exact reasons. And if you are, then that means you are the most politically correct person and your life is a sham. But on that same note, when you do have things that you truly believe and you want to be authentic with, you have to understand the rooms you're in and navigate those conversations and those adjustments accordingly. The person I am at work is not the person I am at home. The way I speak at work is not the way I speak at home. I wish I had the luxury of doing that, but I'm in a culture of people who don't understand the way that I am. A prime example is I ended up having a conversation where I showed some people who I was in college, the pictures I had, some videos of me speaking, and I was like, what do you think? And a couple of them were like, oh, I just see a thug. Like, the person you are right now is completely different than them. And the biggest thing to me was the biggest difference between me and college, outside of a few different beliefs, is purely the way I look, the way I dress more specifically. But at the end of the day, a lot of the thought processes in the videos I talk about now were ideas that I started to formulate in college, because a lot of what I've been developing have come from Think and Grow Rich, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And you can see how beat up this book is specifically from me reading it so much. Atomic Habits by James Clear. These are all books I've read 5 to 10 times since college. Like 48 Laws of Power. I've been through this book like 7 or 8 times. And all these things are conversations and thought processes that have developed from rereading these books and looking at them from a new perspective and from a new environment and being in a new place and still seeing it all play out. And now I'm finally coming forth and talking about it. And so I've really learned, okay, one, code switching, necessary. Because people are watching me at every single point. I need to be vigilant about my code switching. I need to understand that, okay, people are going to watch my content. So when they watch my content, it's got to sound like the person they're going to meet in person. So what is that voice going to be? What is that voice going to be? And so for me, I began to enunciate and articulate far more, because if someone sees my content, I want them to see this side of me. If someone meets me in person, I want them to hear this articulation. When someone sees me at the mall and they see me interacting with other people, they will still see that same person. But that doesn't mean at every moment they're still experiencing the same side of me. Because if I'm going to martial arts practice, I'm going to be far more aggressive. If you see me on a field or on a basketball court playing sports, I'm going to be far more loud. When you see me at work, I'm going to be far more polite, far more agreeable. When I'm creating content, I'm far more focused. I'm sitting here silent. If you come and talk to me, I'll look up, acknowledge what you said, and then be like, can you leave me alone? Because when I'm really tapped into work, I'm focused. Everything else is a distraction besides getting done what I want to get done. But that's the side of me that people aren't always going to be able to get. And so I've noticed code switching, mandatory. But also being able to just be a chameleon and navigate a room and slightly alter specific parts of me. It's important. But the core fiber of who I am must remain the same, so that there's consistency and continuity between what they see online, what they see in person, and what they see when they're trying to view my life without coming to me. And when you accept these things, life is going to change. You have to come to grips with the fact you're always being watched. People right now are looking at your social media account and refusing to give you a follow. There are people you haven't talked to for the past 10 years who are watching what you're saying today. There are people who know the relationship you're in and know what your partner's done 5 years ago because they looked at you and said, why are they with this person? So they wanted to look and dive a little bit deeper. So they asked, who is this person's partner? Once they found your partner's page, they want to say, okay, what college did your partner go to? Oh, that's your partner's parents? What are they doing with their lives? Oh, they're a finance person. They're a this, they're a that. People will go so far to dive deep into your life because they don't want to take the time to get to know you and learn about you from actually interacting with you, that they will become spies. They will become mercenaries trying to fully integrate every aspect of your life into their brain so that when time comes, they can try and kill you with kindness and say the most backhanded compliments they can to reveal the parts and pieces of who they learned about you to be. A lot of people are watching your life. A lot of people are fans of who you are, but aren't sure that you're going to become as successful as you hope to be. And so they're watching from the sidelines, they're watching from the stands, and they're trying to figure you out. They're supporting in the most unsupportive way possible. They're watching, but they're not actually partaking in becoming part of your success. You're being watched. You're being gossiped about. And until you understand that, you will never be able to succeed, especially if you're playing small because you're worried that you'll be watched and talked about. I hope this has all been insightful and it's actually helped you learn a good amount of information, because this has just been something that's been on my mind for the past week and a half, where I've really come to grips with the fact, yes, there are plenty of people watching me, and a lot of them will never acknowledge that they're watching what I'm doing. And it's very funny because you may particularly be one of those people I'm talking about. There's a good chance that you specifically might be one of those people who I haven't talked to in 10 to 15 years, and you're coming to watch what my content has to offer, but you're not following, you're not commenting, and you're not trying to show me that you actually support what I have going on because you're too afraid. And that is actually a very, very funny idea to me, purely based off the fact that if you are one of those people, I have no idea what you're doing. I have no idea who you are. But at the same time, unless you ever were to tell me what you had going on, or until you end up following me, or until you end up DMing me, you simply are a ghost to me. You're another view. You're another part of my engagement and my analytics, but you're just being a little bit weird. Now, I hope you have a great and beautiful day. You stay smart, stay safe. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.